Hey, welcome back to part 4 of the full stack trading app tutorial. Today we're going to be building upon what we learned in the first few videos of the series. We're going to take the database that we created with all of the stock symbols, and we're going to learn how to keep that database up to date by using scheduled tasks to run our program on a schedule, check for new symbols, and add those records to the database over time so that we always have a local database of the latest stock symbols. And also, this will be useful for when we start snapshotting price data. We're going to get price data, and we're gradually going to build an archive of that price data. That way we can have this full price history that we have locally that we can use for backtesting purposes or for storing a history of our trades, that sort of thing. So it's useful to be able to run programs on a schedule. Also, it can be a basis for executing our trades. So maybe we want to run a script on a schedule that every 5 minutes, for instance, checks for a certain pattern or a certain indicator or other conditions in the market and will execute a trade using the Alpaca API, for instance. So not only is it useful for obtaining data and snapshotting it on a schedule, but also it might be useful for scheduling trades or scheduling a notification. So there's all kinds of things you can do with scheduled tasks. I'm going to be showing you how to do that with cron, which is built into Linux and OS X. And I'm also going to be talking about Windows Scheduler. Even though I'm not a Windows user, typically I do have a Windows environment, and I know a lot of people out there use Windows that watch the channel, so I want to make sure I don't leave those people out as well. Although ultimately we're going to want to be more familiar with cron, because when we deploy this application, it's actually going to go on a Linux server on either Linode or DigitalOcean. Because we want to handle when, sure, I can schedule programs to run on my local machine, but what happens when I shut down my laptop or it runs out of power, goes to sleep, and that sort of thing. So we want an always on server by the end of this series that's just always running 24 hours a day and can automate all of our tasks. Before I get started with the tutorial, as always, thanks for anyone that went to the website and went to the donate. I'm going to thank the last few people that donated. I'm going to thank Blacksmith, who said he's been looking for this type of material to get to the next level. So thank you, Blacksmith, for the contribution. Thank you, Sangdad, that's actually my sister. So thank you, Sunny. I miss you. Thanks for giving me, buying me a drink. I miss you, and hopefully I'll see you after all this COVID stuff, after we get through this and can travel again. Thank you, Jay, aka Sniper. He's been leaving a lot of useful comments on the channel, so I appreciate you contributing to the discussion on the channel, and thanks for the compliments about the code. He said it's very simple to follow, so thanks. I like to hear that. I don't think there's any reason to make code more complicated than it needs to be. It's more important. Not only writing code is important, but also it needs to be easy for other people to read, because a lot of times when you're writing on code, or when you're working on code, you're actually working on a team, and people need to be able to read your code, right, and understand what it's doing. And most of the time you actually spend maintaining your code, so it's important to be able to go back and see and understand what you were doing. And if it becomes a nightmare to maintain and read, then it's just very hard code to work with. So it's nice to keep things, I like to keep things very simple, especially for teaching purposes. We want these lessons to be very simple. Thank you to someone, another anonymous donor, and also thank you to Ben, who said he was looking forward to building a full stack app, this series we're working on now, for his home server. And so that's another option in case you don't want to use Linode or DigitalOcean. You can run your own home server and just keep it always on. And also other people are in these comments were mentioning Raspberry Pi, so I thought that might be kind of cool. I'll probably end up ordering one of those and see if we can set up like a little server that's always on there for like $50 or $70, however much it costs. So I'd like to experiment with that. So that's it for that. Let's go ahead and get started with this tutorial. So as I mentioned earlier, there was a few things we've done so far in this tutorial. In the last video, we had already created our SQLite database. So we have a script called createdb.py. It creates a stock table and a stock price table and executes it. And we learned how to execute SQL queries from Python. Then we have this populate_db.py. We talked about how to install the Alpaca Trade API. So we installed that package and learned how to generate an API key and call Alpaca API functions. And one of the first functions we covered, we're going to go through a lot of these functions, but one of these first functions is called list assets, which gets us a list of assets in the Alpaca database, which they keep up to date for us. And so we can get this list of assets. We looped through all of them and we checked for assets that are active and assets that are tradable, because those are the ones that we're interested in our local database. So we looped through this list of assets that they provided in JSON format, and for each one of them, we inserted those into our stock database, and we committed the results in order to commit the transaction and save these records to our database. So now that that's done, and after we inserted those records, I deleted one. I deleted Twitter on purpose just to show, we can modify this list and reduce the number of stocks we want to store. Maybe we're not interested in storing all of the stocks in the known universe. We just want to limit that. But actually, this database, I'm probably going to bring Twitter back. I'm going to keep a full stock database, and then we can use other methods to select only a portion of them for our stock universe. So we'll store them all, but we might only select portions at a time for specific trading strategies. All right, so that's a review of what we did so far. And so the next thing I want to do is make a couple of modifications to this. So if we run the script now, let's do something. So it's been a few days. So I recorded, I think Wednesday night is whenever I did the last video. So let's see if there's any new symbols since then, right? The idea of this lesson is we're going to keep this database up to date. So we already are calling the Alpaca Trade API to get a list of symbols. So I'm going to comment out this part that writes to the database. And let's just see if there's any new symbols. So how would I do that? So the first thing I'm going to do from here, so I've written this out if you want to copy and follow along here. I'm going to query using a select the stocks that are already in my database. So I'm going to put this above here. So after I create this cursor, I'm going to say select symbol, comma, company. Remember, we use SQL select statements from stock. So I'm going to select all of my existing stocks, and then I'm going to use cursor.fetchAll to fetch the results of that query into this variable called rows. So I'm selecting the symbol and the company, those columns, and I'm going to fetch all the rows, and I'm going to loop through each of those rows and print them out. And I'm going to comment out this part of code because I'm not going to do anything with the database. Let's just talk about doing a select query from Python. Okay, so I'm going to run this. Okay, and you see this queried my local database, and it already has tons of symbols in it, which we did last time, right? And you can see when I return the data, it returns these tuples. So each of these is a row, and the 0th index is, for instance, Kodak, the symbol for Kodak, and then Eastman Kodak, which is the name, and then you see AAPL, Apple Inc., and so forth, right? So we're selecting each of those columns, and they come back in a list of tuples, and that's the 0th, and there's the first index. So to access one of these by itself, I could just print row 0, right? And that would just print the stock symbol. But one thing is I don't like having to remember the order of all these. So this would require me typing row 0, row 1, and so forth to access these individually. I like to access these like an object or like a dictionary where I can just put the name of the key, and it makes it very easy to refer to. So what I want to do is where we do the connection, I have this line connection row factory. I'm going to copy this. Below the connection line, we're going to say connection.rowFactory equals SQLite3.row. And what that does is whenever we query, this specifies that our connection, when we query, that it should return it as a SQLite object. And so now when we do for row and rows and print a row, and I run that, it'll be a little easier to access. So we have these row objects, and now all I have to do is do row. Let's see if I can do row dot symbol, if that'll work. Actually, you do it with a key. So you do a row symbol like that. Okay, there you go. So it's nicer, instead of the 0th, I like to just put the name of the column. So I can do row symbol or row company. and we just iterate over all of them and access them by name. So I like putting that line in there. All right. So we have that. So what we want to do here is only insert records that are new. So this is how we get the records that are in our database already. We select symbol and company from stock. So why don't we just put all those symbols in a list, and when we call list assets again, let's just check which assets are not already in this list, and that'll show us just the difference, like what are the newly added stocks since we last populated our database. So that's interesting to know so that we can make sure our script is working correctly. All right. So instead of for row and rows like that, what I'm going to do is what's called a list comprehension. If you're not familiar, you can do symbols. So we create a new variable, and we can do kind of an inline for loop. And so we can say row symbol. So we're accessing each row by the symbol for row in rows. So it's like it's looping over this list, and then it's called row in each iteration. And then I'm building a list like right in line here. So this is going to get me a list of all of the symbols. And so now if I print it like this, print all the symbols, we'll get one big old list of all of our symbols. So you see the brackets at the end. We have a list of every symbol in the database, which is cool. And this is the same as doing symbols equals some list and doing for row in rows symbols dot append row symbol like that. So it's the same as doing that, but it's a little more concise and efficient to just build the list all in one place. So that's how we get our list of symbols. So now that we have this list of all the symbols that were already in our database, how about when we call Alpaca here, call the Alpaca API, we're cycling through our list, iterating over the assets that were returned by Alpaca. And then I'm going to comment this out real quick. And I'll say if asset dot symbol not in symbols, our symbols there, print the asset. So let's see which ones of these are brand new. It's because they're not in our symbol list. So I'm going to print that, and I run through it. Okay, and looks like we got a list there. Quite a few actually. So let's print. I'm going to do an F string here, and I'm going to do added a new stock, and I'm going to do in braces. I'm going to say asset.symbol and asset.name, and let's print it like that so it's a little bit easier to read. And let's see how many new stocks we have when this runs. All right, and that's actually quite a few. Oh, and this is including the delisted ones. So I'm going to bring this line back. All right, and so we'll do if status is active and the asset is tradable and asset symbol is not in symbols, then we'll say added a new stock. Okay, so we're just testing out how this works before we do any inserts in our database. Okay, I'm going to run this one more time, and we should have a smaller list. Okay, so these are the ones that weren't in our database yet. So you see we got our friend Twitter back because it's in the asset list and it's not in our database. So that makes sense. We deleted Twitter last time. And let's check on a few other ones here. Let's verify our results and see. Let's see, what do we have that's new? Let's see what this Bullhorn Holdings is. Never heard of it, so sounds new. So I'm going to type that into Google, see what the story is here. Looks like, okay, sports and entertainment SPAC. Okay, so yeah, that sounds pretty new. SPACs, I don't know if you've been following this, but it's like a new thing. So it says sports and entertainment SPAC Bullhorn Holdings files for $75 million IPO. So you see this is a new, seems like a pretty new symbol that just came on the market. Let's check one more just for fun. We have a new ETF for, yeah, this is also a good way to just kind of follow new symbols that came onto the market. ProShares Transformational Change ETF, the future of work, the digital consumer, the food revolution, genomics, and telehealth. So it sounds like a new basket of stocks for some kind of modern trend. So it might be kind of cool to see what's in there. And it looks like it just came on the market a few days ago. So that article's from 4 days ago. And let's see if we have anything that's on there. And yeah, it has Apple and Alibaba in there. So it's just a way of repackaging the same old stuff and maybe some new symbols that are trendy. So that's another one. And it looks like there's a couple other IPOs in here, which are cool, like this Praxis Precision Medicine. And so another thing nice here, we can kind of keep up to date with the latest symbols, and maybe we want a strategy, or maybe we want to trade IPOs. They've been hot lately. Wow, look at this. So this one was up 46% just today, or just, I guess that was the IPO date. It says it was founded in 2015, and yeah, look at that, 46% the first day. So maybe it's helpful to follow these IPO stocks. But either way, we have a way of updating our database now, and we've tested it. And so now all I got to do is put my cursor line back here, right? And then I'll run this. All right, I ran my script, and you can see it added the stocks, and I can verify in SQLite 3 appdb, SQLite 3 appdb, and if I select star from stock, you should see towards the end here, yep, and you see it incremented, and there's new records for those stocks, which is great. And so you see I manually ran this script, and it added new records to the database. Now, I don't want to do this every day to check for new symbols, right? And so the idea of this tutorial is that we set up a cron job in order to keep this database up to date. So we want it to run on a schedule. And so the way a cron job works, if we look it up, right? There's some good sites for showing the syntax. I believe it's Cron Guru, okay? And this is a way to specify timing. So when we want, so let's say we want to run a script every day at a certain time, or every 5 minutes, or every hour. The syntax here is minute, hour, day, month, and day of week, right? Day of month, and day of week. All right. So if I do all stars, so each of these represents a certain time frame. So if I do all stars here, this will be every single minute. If I do star/5, this will run the program every 5 minutes, right? If I do star/15, and another star every 15th minute. If I do it like that with a 1 in the hour place, you can see, and this is a nice just graphical tool to show you what each of these means. And gradually you'll be familiar enough with this where you don't need any particular tools, but this is how you do the time format in a very concise way. So this means 15th minute past hour number 5. And so these are in military time. So if you do like hour 16, that would run at 4:15 p.m. every day. Okay, and then you have further control, on day of month 3, if you want to run something on the 3rd of every month, or the 1st of every month, or the last day of every month, every other Wednesday, all kinds of stuff, whatever schedule you can think of, you should be able to configure it here according to your time frame. So for new stock symbols, I'm not going to run it like every day, right? Or I'm not going to run it every minute. So the default is like every minute. So all stars is every minute. We don't need to check for new symbols every minute, right? Every day is probably good, and we can just have this run at the end of the day after the market closes. So we could say, at, the 22nd hour. So the 0th minute. So that would be the 0th minute of the 22nd hour. So that'd be 10 p.m. We run it every day at 10 p.m. Okay. So that sounds good. And this even tells you the next time it would run. So today's October 17th, and you see it would run today at 10 p.m. Okay, and since it's 8:55 p.m. over here, I'm going to make it run a little sooner than that. And so I'm going to make it run at, let's get this configured by 8:57. Okay, and so I'll do 2057, which would be 8:57, and let's see if we can get this thing to run. Okay, so the way to actually input this, and I'll have it run at 9 p.m. because it might take me a little bit longer to explain this. So this will be 21. Okay, at 9 p.m. looks like that, right? So I'm going to go here, and from the command line here, I'm going to type cron tab -e, and that'll open up our cron tab, and I'll delete that. And you'll see I actually used cron in one of the older videos, and it was on Tradier and snapshotting option price history database. And so I actually had this running every minute to snapshot the price of a particular option. So it's like the Apple July 11th options or something. And you see this was running every minute. It was running this option history snapshot script and outputting it to a log file as well. And so if you look, I think I actually had this running for a long time. And so I have this log file of it happening. So I was logging my program. I was printing out some results and logging it to a file, right? And then also I have this option history database still that's similar to what we have now. And if I look at the old schema I had, you see I had an option history database with the bid and ask price of this one option I was interested in. And I'm going to do a select star from option history. And you can see how I was recording the option price of starting in like June. I was recording the change in time of this Apple option. So there was an Apple 395 option for July 10th there, and I was recording how this price evolved over the time. And so you can see how it changed, and you can see, yeah, this probably would have been a great option to buy actually. Apple ran to like 500 something, I think, and then split. So that's how I was using it to snapshot an option price. So now I'm going to go back to cron-tab-e. So this one isn't running anymore. It has this pound sign in front of it, which is like Python, you commented out. So I commented that out, so it's not running anymore. And then I'm going to delete that one. And so I'm going to follow this same format in order to set up a new cron job. So I'm going to copy and paste that. And so earlier, that format that we got from the site, it said to run it at 9 p.m. We say the 0th minute and the 21st hour, and every day we're going to run it. Okay, so I'm going to go to the beginning of the line. I'm going to do the 0th minute and the 21st hour, and then it'll be every day. I could type slashes and things to make it every other day or every third day and that sort of thing. And I'm going to run my Python, and I have my Python running in a virtual environment. So I'm going to give me the path to my Python that I'm running, the version of Python that I'm running. And I'm running a script that's in my home directory, user Larry projects. You configure this however it's set up on your machine. And instead of option history, I'm running this other script that we have now. So we have this, what's it called? Full stack-app, and we're calling it populate DB. So I'm going to do full stack -app /populate _db.py, and let's have a log. So this double arrow is going to redirect any print statements I have are going to go to a log, and this is going to be how we verify that this program is running consistently and check, like if there's an exception or something, it would appear in this log. So I'm going to say populate.log. And then, yeah, we're redirecting the output into populate.log, okay? So I'm going to close that. And let's see if this runs. It's going to be another, I'll hit OK. And it updates the cron tab here, which means this job is getting set up. And then let me give it another minute. And so it's 8:59 now. It should run, and we should see a populate dot log appear in my home directory. So I'm in users/Larry, and then I said I want it to log to the current directory it's running in. Okay, so it should appear in my home directory at 9 p.m. whenever time changes. I'll type date real quick. So you see it's 20:59:28, and it should run at 2100. Okay, all right, 9 o'clock just hit. I'm gonna type date, so you see 2100 hit, and now if I list my directory, you see there's a populate log there. So I'm going to cat populate log, and it says no such table stock. So what went wrong there? So the table stock obviously exists because I can log into my app DB here, and you can see select star from stock. You know, the stock table's there. So what's wrong there? What it looks like happened, so I did get a database connection. What it looked like happened at 9 p.m. When this cron tab runs, it uses when this program runs here, it's using the directory that cron is running in by default. So it's actually running in my home directory. And since I have appdb right here, it's actually creating a new appdb in my home directory. and the populate.log is going in my home directory. Okay, so it's okay that the populate log goes in my home directory. You see it created a new file there, but you also see at 9 p.m. here, there's an app.db in my home directory, which is not the one I want to use. That doesn't have my database tables in it, so it created a new one. So to avoid the problem of the path here being in relative to whatever directory I happen to be in, let's go ahead and type an absolute path in here just to make sure. And so I'm going to do users Larry project / full stack app. And you can dynamically generate this directory if you want to as well. So I'm just going to type out this full absolute path here, users Larry projects full stack app appdb, just like that. And then I'll make sure there's no ambiguity on where this is running. And I can go back to my cron tab right here. And I'm going to say, now that's 9:08, I'm going to say the 9th minute. And I'm going to save that. And if I do the date, so you see it's 21:08, and let's see what happens when it runs again at the 9th minute. The other thing we'll do real quick is clear out a few records from our database. That way this script has something to do. So we want to delete some records just like we deleted Twitter, and make sure when this runs, it actually adds the new records to the database. So I'll show you how to do that. And the way we'll do that for now, one of the commenters mentioned SQLite a GUI. And so we've been typing a lot of SQL queries, but now that we know some of that, it's okay to use a graphical browser like this for the desktop. So this one's called SQLite Browser at sqlitebrowser.org. It's open source and free. I recommend it. Great tool to use that makes it very easy to browse our database, and you can download it for Windows, Mac, and so forth. So I downloaded that for OS X, and so I'm going to run it. I've already installed it, so just install this SQLite Browser. I run this, and you see we have this nice desktop application, right? I should have showed you this in the first place, right? But it's nice to know how to run the SQL queries, because you're going to have to go on a server and deploy all this stuff where you might not have these tools available. So it's good to understand all of this at a low level. And so what I can do here is click Open Database, go to my directory in my projects where I have my full stack app, find the database, appdb, and you see I have this nice tree structure where I can browse. Instead of typing like .schema and looking at all that, you can see this is a lot clearer to browse. I can go to browse data, just like an Access database or spreadsheet. I can browse through the contents of my database and see all my symbols here. And I can also execute SQL if I want to. So if I want to execute those statements, I can do select star from stock right here, limit 10, and it has some auto completion. There you go. And so I did a select statement, and I see the results right there. So it's just a nice graphical interface to this data. And so since I have that, let's see if we can go ahead and delete some records. So I'm going to delete these. Let's see if it lets me delete from here. So I'm going to delete from even before Twitter. I'm going to delete even up to Apple. And if I right click this, let's see what I can do. It doesn't look like there's a way to just say delete records like that. So I'm going to use regular SQL. There may be an option if you find it. I'm just going to use regular SQL. I'm going to delete all the ones with an ID greater than 8924. So I'm going to do delete from stock where ID greater than 8924. And I'm going to hit this play, run that, and it says it finished. And then I'll go back to my browse data. And at the bottom, let's see. And now we've deleted all those records. So we've cleared out some records, and I'm just doing this. I know this takes a while, but I like to just show all this happening so you can see how to manage your data and do everything in order, how to test things very thoroughly, and how to edit any mistakes if you mess something up, how to correct that. So if you wanted to delete some records manually, that's how you could do it. All right. So I have my script already running or ready to run, and let's go ahead and modify this from 9 p.m. to 9. It'll be 9:13 p.m. now. And I'm installing a new cron tab. Okay. And let's see. All right. So we're going to wait a few seconds here, and it should be 9:13 p.m. And date. Okay. So it's 9:13 p.m. now. All right. So I let it run again. And if I type out populate.log, okay, you see it actually works. So you see our logging of the new stocks that were added. Got printed to our log file. So our log file, we have the contents here. And so we can have a log file that, prints the date and then the new stocks that were added that day, and we'll have this log of what's happening, and this can just run every day and keep our database up to date. All right, so that's it for this lesson. I know we didn't cover that many topics, but it's very important to know how to schedule the running of a program at a particular time. We can change this to run, we'll probably run it like 10 p.m. So in the future, I'll have it run at the 0th minute and the 22nd hour, and we know that works, so that's a good time to use. And then we'll talk about, in the next video, I'll talk about price history, and we'll run something, we'll run that one on a shorter time frame, maybe every 15 minutes or every hour or so, and snapshot price data. And I'll also go into the Windows scheduler part that I talked about earlier. So thanks a lot for watching, and stay tuned for the next video where I will talk about more ways of scheduling programs to execute, specifically focusing on snapshotting price history. Thanks a lot.